Japan and India represent the second and third largest economies of Asia. Both are firmly democratic and share extensive cultural links rooted in Buddhism. In modern times, they also share a desire for regional peace in Asia and an aspiration to play a leading role in a multipolar world. The past decade has seen much reflection and mutual appreciation for these shared values and interests. As a result, cooperation has expanded on multiple fronts. The 2 plus 2 ministerial dialogues, extensive Japanese financial assistance to India, collaboration on large scale projects, joint naval exercises, just to name a few. But the resurgence of Quad, a strategic forum for cooperation between India, Japan, US, and Australia, has shown the potential for a much deeper and strategic partnership between Japan and India. In this session, Dr. Satoru Nagao is going to discuss the opportunities and challenges for Indo-Japanese partnership and what the future has in store for the two Asian nations in a rapidly evolving world order. Dr. Nagao is a non-resident fellow at Hudson Institute based in Tokyo, Japan. His research area in US, Japan, India, his research area is in US, Japan, India Security Cooperation. He was awarded his PhD by Gaokushin University for his thesis, India's Military Strategy. He has authored numerous books and articles on security issues and writes a column, Age of Japan-India Alliance at Nikkei Business. So welcome to Argumentative Indians. It's an honor to have you with us.
Thank you very much. It is an honor for me. Yeah, so can I start?
Yes, sir, please go ahead.
Okay. So today I will use the PowerPoint. So I will share my PowerPoint first. So can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes, perfectly. It's just that you can, I think maybe you can play the slides so we can get the full screen. Is it possible to make it?
This is a full screen. Is it?
Okay. Okay, yeah, perfect. Then let's go back to that screen. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So I start now. The evolution of the Indo-Japan relations. The why have the two countries done this is today's topic. And I'll make a presentation. So thank you very much. Recently, improved cooperation between Japan and India has become more evident. Japan and India have been increasing their diplomatic exchanges, joint exercises of our armed forces, and seeking joint infrastructure projects. Especially the age of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and Modi, the relation is like that. So that is the reason I focus on this picture. But why? Why did PM Abe needs a cooperation with India? That is an interesting topic. One of the example is Japan's Quad and Indo-Pacific concept. Why was the Quad or why was the concept of the Indo-Pacific formed? Indeed, we need to ask the question, what is the Indo-Pacific and what is the Quad? Well, Japan was a pioneer in creating the concept of the Indo-Pacific and the quadrilateral security dialogue, which is Quad, rolling. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's speech in the Indian Parliament in 2007, entitled Conference of Two Seas, introduced the idea. He said, by Japan and India coming together in this way, this broader Asia will evolve into an immense network spanning the entirety of the Pacific Ocean, incorporating the United States of America and Australia. Open and transparent, this network will allow people, goods, capital, and knowledge to flow freely, he said. That's why That's why we want to ask one question. Why did Abe need these concepts? From his speech, one can see the three reasons. First, he needs a way to link both Pacific and the Indian Ocean. Um, Indo-Pacific is replaced the concept of the Asia-Pacific, which did not include Indian Ocean region. Because of rapid economic development, both Pacific and Indian Ocean region are increasingly emerging as an influential region in the world politics. The International Institute for Strategic Studies, the think tank in the United Kingdom, pointed out that nominal Asian defense spending, excluding Australia and New Zealand, overtook that of NATO Europe. European country belong to NATO in 2012. So therefore, to explain current trend in the world politics, Abe saw a need for new concepts that tied in the all ascendant regions, including both Pacific and the Indian Ocean region. But that is the first reason. There is a second reason. Prime Minister Abe want to introduce both Indo-Pacific and the Quad concept at the same time because he believed that rising Indo-Pacific should not be a China-dominated region. He explained this idea in his article, Asia's Democratic Security Dialogue, which was published just before he was sworn in as a prime minister for a second time in 2012. The Indo-Pacific is geographic concept that include all the countries surrounding China, and the Quad include all the great power except China. And thirdly, that is the most important indeed. Prime Minister Abe want to emphasize the importance of India and its integration into the Quad with the concept of the Indo-Pacific instead of Asia-Pacific, which did not include India. So both Japan and Australia are long-time US allies, treaty-based allies, with established modes of the cooperation. But India was a newcomer. So why Prime Minister Shinzo Abe want to introduce Indo-Pacific or Quad? To cooperate with India, he needs a Quad and Indo-Pacific. So India is most important. That is the reason he emphasized, Japan emphasized the Quad and Indo-Pacific. This is symbolic and a very important part of the India-Japan relations. However, deep India-Japan relations have not always naturally occurred because of the geographical or geopolitical distance. For example, according to the Indian Ministry of External Affairs, 40,000 non-resident Indians live in Japan. And Japan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs pointed out that about 10,000 Japanese live in India. This is in 2018. However, how many non-resident Indians live in the United States, Australia, or China? In the case of the United States, you can see this number, more than 1 million. Thousand, yes. In case of Australia, 241,000. Even if in China, 55,000 Indians live in China. And in case of Japanese, live in India is 10,000, but the US, 446,000, in Australia, 100,000, in China, 120,000. So why? Why Japan focusing on India is a very important question. So that is the reason in this presentation, I focusing on these three questions. Why the relation between India and Japan have progressed recently? This is quite important. To answer this, there are small questions. How have India-Japan relations developed? And why have the two countries done this? And how does the Quad work? Quad introduced by Japan to cooperate with India? Or how does the Quad work? That is an important strategic question. Okay, this one. So how have India-Japan relations developed? India-Japan relations hold high-level bilateral, trilateral, quadrilateral dialogues. India and Japan signed General Security of Military Information Agreement, GSOMIA, to share the information in 2015, military information, and Acquisition and Cross-Service Agreement, AXA, to share the supplies for their military in 2020. And India and Japan conducted joint exercises, Army and Army, the name is the Dharma Guardian, Navy and Navy, the GMEX or Marabao, or Air Force and Air Force, Sindhu, Matri. So in 2018, India and Japan started joint development unmanned ground vehicles. This is between the Ministry of Defense. So India and Japan signed civilian nuclear agreement in 2016 also. So there are plenty of agreements in security field. But despite this being some big projects such as Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor or economic relations have not deepened enough on bilateral basis indeed. For example, for India, the biggest trading partner is not Japan, of course. The US is biggest, and the next one is China, and third one is UAE. In case of Japan, Japan ranked the 12th as a trading partner for India, only 2.2%. For Japan, India's trade share is only 1.2% of the total trade. So economic relation is very thin, security relation is very deep. That's what happened. So if I pointed at three features, firstly, until now, India-Japan security relations have developed faster than the economic relations. And the India-Japan bilateral relations have developed alongside multilateral relations, including those with the US and Australia, like Quad or Indo-Pacific vision. And thirdly, India-Japan relations have grown closer since end of 2000, when China's activity began to grow and were perceived as a threat to the both countries. Therefore, China is certainly a decisive factor to increasing India-Japan cooperation. So why have the two countries done this? So what has happened is the key. For Japan, the main concerning point is China's activity in the sea around Japan, of course. Beijing has been expanding its military activities near Japan. For example, in 2004, China's nuclear attack submarine violated Japan's territorial sea in the East China Sea. And China has also been carrying out naval exercises on the Pacific side of Japan since 2008. The recent example is 2021. This year, 5 Chinese warships and 5 Russian warships jointly circled Japan. These activities has expanded the defense line of China from the first island chain, you can see in the figure, and to the second island chain, you can see the figure. In addition, around the Taiwan Strait, China's rapid military modernization is changing the strategic balance with the Taiwan and provoking Taiwan militarily. So Chinese fighter jets have repeatedly entered Taiwan's airspace on October 4th, 2021, this year, when 56 Chinese military planes entered Taiwan's air defense identification zone in one day. And recently, China has increased its activities on the Pacific side of Taiwan. In China's armed force deploys here permanently, it would cut Taiwan off from the US and Japan. So given all this, the US Indo-Pacific commander, Admiral Philip Davidson, that time, recently warned that the China could invade Taiwan within 6 years. Taiwan is located nearly 100 kilometers from Japan. Once China started attack or blockade Taiwan, it will be impossible for Japan to escape from the conflict. So even if China does not attack the main island of Taiwan, there is also a possibility that it could attack the small islands such as Koemori or Pratas Island or Itzaba Island and others. So Taiwan situation in Taiwan also is serious for Japan's security. So why is China is provoking us? That is an important question. This question we want to ask in the East China Sea, Taiwan Strait, or South China Sea, or Indian Ocean, or in the China border area also. So that is the reason I want to analyze this, or I want to compare with the situation in this area, and that will be the key to understand why Japan focusing on Quad or focusing on India. So 3 important similarities I found. One by one, I will explain. First one. First similarity of the note is China's repeatedly disregard for the international law when laying claim to new territories. Where in the East China Sea, China did not claim the Senkaku Island before the 1970s. China's attitude has since changed due to the potential existence of oil reserve in the East China Sea. And at the same time, the Senkaku Islands are in the strategic location to pressure Taiwan and have potential oil reserve. And China is expressing the same attitude in the India-China border area. In this case, Dr. Lobsang Senge, that time the president of the Tibetan Exile Administration, expressed that Dalai Lama considers the disputed territory of the both Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh to be part of India. So there is a high possibility that China's claim to the area along the Indo-China border area is legally baseless. So I start to explain the second one. Second recurring facet of the China's behavior is its exploitation of military power vacuum. Look at this. For example, in South China Sea, China's occupied half of the Paracel Island just after the France withdrew from Indochina in 1950s. In 1974, China expanded its presence of all of the Paracel Island after the US withdrew from the South Vietnam. Additionally, China occupied the 6th feature of the Spratly Island after Soviet Union decreased its military presence in Vietnam in 1988. Again in 1995, China laid claim to Mischief Reef after US troops withdrew from Philippines. So like the South China Sea, in the both East China Sea and India-China border area, the military balance has changed recently, causing China to mistakenly infer that there is a power vacuum. According to the SIPRI, the think tank in Sweden, SIPRI military expenditure database published in 2021 indicate that from 2011 to 2012, 2011 to 2020, China increased its military expenditure 76% in the decade. In comparison, Japan increased expenditure only 2.4%. India increased its expenditure 34%. So that's Japan's defense in East China Sea or India's military defense along the Indo-China border area are not weak. But the gap between the countries of the military expenditure has widened in the last decade. That is also fact. So along with the greater relative increase in military spending, China military activity has also increased. This is the number of the China's vessels identified within the contiguous zone in the water surrounding the Senkaku Island of Japan. This is the number of the Indo-China border area Indeed, in 2011, China has made about 230 incursions into the line of actual control. But since 2011, number of the incursions has increased greatly. And in 2019, the number reached 663 incursions in 1 year. 1 year is 365 days. So that is the reason. I overlap two figures. That is the figure. When we compare the two figures, we'll find one similarity. This move is China's move or China's provocation. Both places, see around the Senkaku Island or Indo-China border area, in both areas, they provoke us at the same time. That is what happened. That is the reason Japan focusing on India, and India focusing on Japan, I think. We should cooperate. So I should explain the third one. Finally, China's arguably lawless expansionism is usually paired with the effort to exclude countries that are outside the region. In the East China Sea, the China blames its assertive behavior on the intervention of the outsiders. Similarly, in the case of the Indo-China border area, China is trying to halt India's cooperation with the US, Japan, and Australia. So China believes the agreement among these four countries, this means the Quad, the Indo-Japan, the US, Australia, as an effort to containment, and therefore want to stop them. So they try to exclude others. But at the same time, because of this, to stop this cooperation, China is focusing, China is choosing one country to make pressure indeed. Indeed, which country would China choose to pressure? The most likely answer is India, because China and India share a nearly 4,000-kilometer land border, unlike the US, Japan, Australia, allowing China to rebuild its army. And moreover, China perceives that it can more easily persuade India to leave the US-led security framework because India and the US are not formal allies. So much like its behavior in the East China Sea, the China is using its military pressure to India to drop foreign partnership that might inhibit China. So how do countries affected by China's ambitions like India and Japan respond? China's lack of respect of the international law, expansion of the territorial claim where there are power vacuums, and effort to exclude outside actors from the regional intervention are all common thema of China's exploit in the East China Sea, Taiwan Strait, South China Sea, the Indian Ocean, and now Indo-China border area. So thus the question remains is how do countries affected by China's ambitions like India and Japan respond? Knowing the pattern of China's behavior point towards the answer. We should do the opposite of what China wants. Firstly, the countries around China must continue to respect rule-based order, grounded in the current international law. Second, China's neighbors, of course, India and Japan, need to fill the military power vacuum by increasing their defense budget. And third, India and Japan need to continue to enhance the security cooperation with the US, Australia, and other like-minded countries. So when India, Japan cooperate with the US and Australia or other like-minded countries, the partnership should promote not only the regional security, helping fill these power vacuums, but also the economic cooperation. Because the strength of the China's army and the infrastructure project under the Belt and Road Initiative to create a depot to control other countries and develop China's military base, depending on the ample military budget. So just China's neighbors, including India and Japan, should avoid supporting China's economy. This means that funding their military, expanding the military infrastructure. So by strengthening the relation with the US and Australia or other like-minded countries. So how does the Quad work? We need to explain. First, the Quad must continue to respect and insist upon the rule-based order grounded in the current international law. And second, Quad countries need to fill the perceived power vacuum by maintaining military balance. And thirdly, Quad countries need to integrate their economic effort and reduce their reliance on China. So try to apply the Quad. So one by one, I try to explain the more fixed suggestion. But Quad must continue to respect and insist upon the rule-based order grounded in current international law. Quad countries, including India and Japan, are a group of democracy of the rule-based order based on current international law. So this framework is very powerful to show how important rule-based order. And if other countries believe that non-democratic China is model for success, the democratic countries, including India and Japan, will increasingly lose influence in the future. So that is the reason democratic countries like Quad member must respect rule-based order and win the competition. And secondly, Quad countries need to fill the perceived power vacuum by maintaining military balance. But how? Indeed, there are three areas I try to explain. If India and Japan and the US and Australia cooperate with each other, there are at least three methods to maintain military balance. First, we should focus on the linkage of the Indo-China border area and East China Sea. For example, if India cooperates with Japan and the US, India will not need to deal with all the Chinese fighter jets and the missiles at once. Indeed, China needs to devise their defense budget also against Japan, against India. So because China is likely to keep some of its fighter jet, missiles, or their defense budget in its east side against Japan, and vice versa. And China's defense budget is also divided among its east front against Japan and southern front against India. I'll explain repeatedly. So therefore, by using its know-how and the high-end military infrastructure development, that is the answer. And so that is the first one, I suggest. Secondly, if India has the will and the capabilities, Japan and the US and Australia will be able to release themselves from the heavy burden to safeguard security in the Indian Ocean and can deploy more military forces in the East China Sea and the South China Sea to maintain military balance. So this is effective use of the military resources. And thirdly, India and Japan can collaborate to support Southeast Asian countries around the South China Sea, which need to beef up their defense with a trustworthy partner that provides military support. Indeed, India has a long record to support the military organization in the Southeast Asian countries. That is the reason. Japan has a record too, and the US has a record too, but that is the reason we should cooperate. We should collaborate each other. So effective use of resources, military resources, is the key to maintain military balance. And in this case, in this new wave of move has arrived. There's an increasing move related with a long-range strike capability. That is a very important issue. For a long time, Japan and Australia have depended on the US strike capability. So defensive defense is the main strategy for Japan and Australia. And if they need offensive capabilities, they rely on the United States. But so for example, if I explain that Japan possesses a missile defense capability to intercept enemy's missiles. North Korea fire missiles, China fires missiles. Japan can intercept these missiles by using a missile defense system, but not the capability to strike the missile launch pad of the North Korea or China. This is what I want to say. So in this case, Japan rely on the US strike capability. However, recent move has changed the situation. Japan, Australia, and indeed India also have recently been seeking the strike capability. This is risk. In case of Japan, it decided to modify its current ISMO and the Kaga helicopter carrier to be aircraft carrier with F-35B fighter jet. And the domestic surface-to-surface missile also extend its range from the current 200 kilometer to the 900 kilometer or 1,500 kilometer or 2,000 kilometer range anti-ship missiles. So in case of Japan, Japan is extending the range. In case of Australia, in the July 2020, Australia announced its intent to possess long-range strike capability. If Australia uses the latest missile with F-35, Australia can deliver the 2,000 kilometer range. In case of India, it has developed its strike capability very actively indeed. Originally, India possessed nuclear weapons and had strike capability. But since 2010, India has developed more conventional strike capabilities. Since September 2020, India has tested many long-range missiles, and that is a list of the long-range missiles. So that is the reason I made this. And what can I say is, along with the US has a strike capability, but along with the US, Japan, India, Australia, all planning to possess 1,000 to 2,000 kilometer long-range strike capability at the same time. So indeed, Taiwan, Vietnam, Philippines, and South Korea are also increasing their strike arsenal. It's a surface-to-surface missile now. And the move could be the key. For example, if both India and Japan possess long-range strike capabilities, their combined capability forces China to defend multiple fronts. Even if China decides to expand its territories along the Indo-China border area, it still needs to expend a certain amount of its budget and military forces to defend itself against Japan. In addition, to deal with the route China is using to expand its territories, long-range strike capability is useful. If the storage or other choke points are under the range of the Quad's strike capability, China loses confidence in using these routes. So in the case of the mountainous Indo-China border area, India can attack strategic bridges, tunnels, airports, anything by using missiles. This reduced China's confidence in using this strategic infrastructure. So that is the logic, how to maintain military balance. So I'm focusing on the other area, third reason. Quad countries need to integrate their economic efforts to reduce their reliance on China. Also, China is the first or second-rate trading partner for Japan, India, and Australia also. If these countries depend too heavily on the trade with it, the economies will be like passenger of the sinking ship if they try to show the strong stance toward China. So that is the reason decoupling or risk diversifying of the supply chain and the markets are necessary. Indeed, Japan has already begun to do so. Because Japan has relocated its factories from China to Southeast Asia or South Asia, especially the India and Bangladesh in this case, the number of Japanese citizens living in China has decreased from 150,000 in 2012 to the 110,000 in 2012. 20, sorry. Every time I mistake this, 2020. At the same time, the number of the Japanese living in the US has increased from the 410,000 in 2012 to the 426,000 in 2020. So in addition, Japan earmarked $2.2 billion of its 2020 economic stimulus package to help local manufacturers shift production out of China. So currently, Quad is trying to neutralize China's influence in the other area too. For example, China is the main provider of the vaccine. China is also the main supplier worldwide of the rare earth elements that are needed for the new technologies. China is dominating the solar panel production to deal with the climate change. Well, China is the main supplier of the infrastructure project for the many developing countries. But this advantage of the China's project, because of the budgetary size or speed, the China has advantage. That is the reason China dominates this area. But that is the reason India only or Japan only is not the effective choice. Quad plus, including Indian Japan and collective effort, is effective choice. So I should stop this presentation after I say the conclusion. The Indo-Pacific has become the increasing ascendant region, and the Quad concept, including India and Japan, has sought to restrain the China's dominance there. So the more China escalates the situation, the more our collaboration capability of the Quad, including India and Japan, will be institutionalized in the Indo-Pacific. That is what happened. That is why Japan focusing on India and India focusing on Japan, I believe. Thank you very much. I should stop this.
Thank you, Dr. Nagao. That was a very informational presentation, especially I think the statistics you showed around Chinese incursions in Senkaku Islands and along the Indo-China border and how they sort of coincide. I think that was just fascinating. I had no idea that there were such parallels there. And I think that's the main thing. It's not well known. Like a lot of countries are dealing with China independently. Like India tends to think of China issues as much more related to the border issues, the border disputes, as well as Pakistan's Chinese support for Pakistan. But they don't look at it in a larger space, that it's not just with India. There is also there's similar disputes going on with Japan, with Philippines, with Malaysia. So that understanding is not there across the region. I think everybody is dealing independently, which is why this kind of discussion is very, very helpful. Please allow me to bring in some of the attendees to ask you questions. Okay, let me start. I will bring in promote to panelist. Okay, so we are being joined by Shreyas Isaac and Sabahat Ali. Let's give it a minute. Okay, yeah, Sabahat, she's with us.
Yes, am I audible?
Yes, perfectly, Sabahat. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I was following your presentation and I noted the things that most of the topics were concerning towards the traditional threats to the security. So I wanted to, at the end, you mentioned about climate change. I want you to focus more upon the non-traditional threats to the security, like the global and endemic security challenges to the Indo-Pacific region, and also the climate change that is the biggest concern for every country right now. So how does that pan out for Quad? How does that reflect upon the Quad's workings and the cooperation beyond Indo-Pacific that is much needed for the work towards lessening the effect of climate change?
Okay. So should I reply one by one?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much for asking. This is an important question. Yes, my specialty is defense and security originally, the strategy. So that is the reason I focus on this is, of course. But at the same time, China is dominating the market of the solar panel or the other products related to climate change. That is also important matter in the Quad. That is the reason Quad focusing on climate change. In the March 2021, this year, the first summit has held, of course, an online basis, and face-to-face summit has happened in the September. In the both summits, they are talking about how to deal with the climate change. Why? Because climate change, if the restriction of the climate change will come apply to the all of the country, they need to use many products produced in the factory in China. So China will expand their influence through the making the rule of the climate change. So that is the reason we supply chain issue and the climate change issue is combined, and the Quad Summit need to talk about it. So who will make the world order is the most important issue to decide the rule in the world. So under such kind of case, US side leads to making the rule in the world for a long time. But now China is challenging. Under such kind of situation, many countries do not wish to follow the rule made by China. Even if, so climate change issue or other issue, infrastructure issue, or other supply chain related issue, economic security issue, all of these are common because under the China decided rule, we do not want to leave. That is the reason we do not want to we want to respect the rule-based order based on current international law and under the democratic process by the democratic countries. That is maybe soft power aspect of this issue and related to the climate change, I think. Thank you.
Thanks. Tia, do you want to ask your question? Tia Singh? I'm not sure if she's here. And Trias Isaac?
Sure.
Okay,
Here,
Tia, go ahead.
Good evening, sir. Thank you for such an interesting lecture. My question is, do you think that Indo-Japanese cooperation on the supply chain resilience initiative can provide an alternative and effectively diffuse the Chinese economic influence in the region? Because as we've seen in the COVID pandemic, there's been a rethinking of global supply chains, right? So, but at the same time, do you think that decoupling with China is an easy option for both India and Japan, as they share a huge volume of trade currently? So what do you think, what situation will present itself in the near future?
This is also a good question. Yes, it is true. It is not easy to decouple with China's economy. But view from the US policy in the past, we must do it. That is also the fact. For example, why I need to say so? Because when I analyze the history of the United States, they say the history is only 246 years until this year. But this means that the US needs only the 169 years to change from just one of the colony of the British Empire to the only one superpower in the world. And last 76 years, US has maintained their status as a superpower. And during that process, all of the rivals has disappeared, including Germany, Japan, and the Soviet Union. So if United States start to say China is most serious competitor, what will happen? If the history will repeat, China will disappear. Despite this, if India and Japan rely on the market in China, rely on the supply chain to China, their economy will be passenger of the sinking ship. So this is not wise choice. So it is not, decoupling is not an easy choice. Many people believe it is impossible, but one by one, we must do it to avoid serious damage or collateral damage of the US-China competition. This is, we must do it. Thank you.
Sorry. There is a question from somebody in attendees called Siddharth Acharya. His question to you, sir, is how does Japan view China-Russia nexus as a security threat to the larger Indo-Pacific?
That is a serious problem for Japan because Japan shares the sea border with China, that's true. But most Indian people do not realize that Japan shares the sea border with Russia too. During the Cold War, Russia is the main target for the Japan self-defense force. So if China and Russia cooperate and collaborate actually on Japan, indeed we are facing because this year the jointly circled around Japan, and not only the naval ship, the bombers come to Japan jointly. Both Russian bomber and Chinese bomber try to enter Japan territory air too. So under such kind of situation, this is a serious issue. Japan needs to divide their defense forces against China and Russia at the same time. How to deal with it? Of course, there are many methods. Why the Prime Minister Shinzo Abe negotiate with Putin in the past? Because Japan worry about such kind of situation. But now it has really happened. So Japan cooperate with Western Europe now because they are facing a Russian threat, but they are not facing China's threat. Japan faces China and Russia at the same time, but Russia need to deal with Japan and Western Europe at the same time. So in this case, to divide Russia's resources, cooperation with Western Europe is one of the choice. But at the same time, Japan asked Russia to cooperate with China is not beneficial for the EU. It's another method Japan has done. But this policy nearly collapsed because Russia do not have the will to leave from China because Russia is under sanction from the Western Europe plus Japan. Under such kind of situation, Russia cannot trust these countries, including Japan. And so for Russia, China is a very important buyer for their resources. Under economic sanctions, they cannot sell so much to the other country, but China can buy. And at the same time, if China is the main target of the United States, Russia can avoid to be the main target from the United States. So it is beneficial for Russian security. So Russia has motivation to cooperate with China. Under such kind of situation, Japan's effort diplomatic effort to Russia hasn't worked well. So Russia-China combination is serious for Japan, but Japan is facing, and it is not impossible. It is impossible to avoid such kind of situation. That is what happened currently. But yeah,
Thank
this
you.
is the answer. What happened?
Shreyas?
Yeah, good evening. So my question was, Japan sees China as such a big threat to them, but why did Japan go ahead and sign the RCEP trading agreement with China, which sort of India didn't sign it because we were scared that China would use it to threaten our security. But why did Japan go ahead and sign it?
This is very natural question. Indeed, when I hear that, I also ask the same question. But I understand what happened. RCEP is a very old idea of Japan. Why? Because for a long time, the threat of China is manageable, Japan's believed. If Japan cooperate with other countries, including India, Australia, as a RCEP, we can manage China's attitude. We can neutralize China's influence in this region because we combine each other. Share of the China's market is one of them, of the RCEP, Japan believes. But this idea is obsolete. Why? Because US policy has changed. If US really think China is rival and will destroy China's influence, like the US-Soviet Cold War or other competition US has experienced, in this case, if Japan promotes RCEP and Japan's economy more integrated with China's economy, it will be the suicide. So RCEP is a traditional idea how to neutralize China's influence, and Japan has continued to do so. But age has already changed, and this is already obsolete, I believe. But still, the people who believe RCEP is good continues that policy, and it has really happened. So now this is too old. We should stop it. But it has really started. That is my understanding about the RCEP.
Yeah, does it answer your question, Shreyas, entirely?
Yeah, it does. It does answer my question, but I mean, it sort of perplexes me why countries like Australia and Japan really want to economically integrate themselves with China, because India, for one, is really, really scared of that, and all our trading policy is focused on balancing China. So, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So I think India's decision is more clever one, because India sees the world, and India's decision is always flexible. So Japan and Australia work with very old laws, but India find new laws and went to the new laws, working on the new laws. That is my perception. So India's decision has right.
Okay, Mayank Kalra.
Good evening, Dr. Nagao. My question is, how can Indo-Japanese strategic convergence tackle threats emerging from China?
So basically, like, if you kind of like, in what ways can India and Japan together counter the Chinese threat? And do you think they would be sufficient in countering China? The Japanese and Indian, I mean, both militarily are still quite limited compared to China.
Okay, if we
Actually,
focusing
so before,
only in the,
sorry to interrupt. Just before, actually, I also had a question somewhat related to this. So let me also bring that,
Okay.
and you can address them jointly. So since the AUKUS pact came around between US and Australia to provide the technology support to Australia to build its own nuclear armed submarines, there has been a lot of discussion around, well, that other two Quad partners have not been included in this pact. So first of all, I wanted to ask you, what is the Japanese view on AUKUS? Do you see it in a positive way, or do you see it as being demoted to sort of Japan being demoted, not being part of that military alliance? And also, what is your view regarding India? Is that a reflection of the lack of confidence among the other allies in India's capabilities? Because Japan still has the NATO alliance with the US and Australia. And now there is this AUKUS pact, which further solidifies US-Australia alliance. It's India, which is the only partner which is not really allied in any way. And there has been talks of like potentially India and Japan forming something like AUKUS between themselves. What do you see the scope of that, given that Japan is part of the NATO alliance and India is not?
Okay, so I should explain what of the security system has emerging in this region. For a long time, we called hub and spoke. Hub and spoke is a security system in this region, and because the hub and spoke system is not enough to deter China, we are changing the hub and spoke system to the network-based system. So I should explain one by one. Hub and spoke system is there is a hub and spoke, of course, but based on the bilateral alliance with the United States. So US is center, and US ally with Japan, US ally with Australia, US ally with Philippines, US ally with Thailand, US ally with South Korea. But in this system, Japan and Australia is not ally. Japan and South Korea is not ally. Philippines, Thailand is not ally. Every time the US is center and get all of the information, but other countries do not share the information. They do not know. So this system heavily rely on the United States only. But now the US-China military balance change. Still, US spend 3 times bigger military expenditure. The simply the think sunk in the Sweden thing. But at the same time, the US military power is not enough to deter China's provocation. Under such kind of situation, this system is not enough to deter China. So rely on the US only is not the answer now. That is the reason US itself pushed other allies and partners to do the network-based system. What is a network-based system? Network-based system is Japan and Australia are both a US ally. If so, Japan and Australia should cooperate each other. India is newcomer and rising power and very key part of this system in the network-based system, and cooperate with Japan, cooperate with Australia, and there is a meeting, trilateral meeting, India, Australia, Japan. This framework do not include the United States, even if United States hasn't included United States say if this cooperation shares a burden, it is welcome for the United States. That is what happened. So there are many bilateral, trilateral, quadrilateral, or many unilateral cooperation has emerged in this region, like India, Indonesia, Australia, France, including Japan, India, United States. There are many types of this unilateral cooperation, creates a network-based system and shares the security burden to maintain military balance with China. So if we talk about AUKUS, view from this system, AUKUS is part of it. That is the reason Japan's view toward AUKUS is positive. Japan, Quad and AUKUS both are survived in this network-based system, and very important key because member of this trilateral cooperation or quadrilateral cooperation are influential. For example, the Quad I explained today, Quad is a group of great countries in the Indo-Pacific, except China. So if the US-China competition escalates and the US try to crush China's influence in this region, who will lead the Indo-Pacific? Quad will lead the Indo-Pacific. AUKUS is also the corporation. Yes, they are all of them speak English well, and France cannot include it. That's true. But at the same time, as a part of the network-based system, they are welcome and they can contribute to maintain military balance with China. This is beneficial for all of the countries around China. So, Quad is strategic cooperation. AUKUS is more military specific, but both can survive in this system, and it is welcome for Japan. This is Japan's view towards AUKUS and network-based security system now. Is this a proper answer for you?
Yes, it's very clear. So that makes a lot of sense. And also we've come towards the end of our session. So I would like to thank you on behalf of all the attendees. Thanks a lot for this very insightful session. It was very informative for us. And probably the first time we actually hear from the Japanese perspective that like some of the security concerns are not India's alone. They are shared much widely in the region. Hopefully, we can have more sessions like this in the future. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It is a great honor for me to explain my idea to you. Thank you very much for listening.